Hey everybody, welcome back. So this week I wanted to talk to you about some fun and interesting experiences I had by way of my ex and his band. He and I were together about 8 years, and I would say about 2 to 3 months after he and I had gotten together, he and his best friend John had started a synth pop band called Matrix. So at the time, their record label was Out of Line, which was based out of Germany, and they had acts such as S.P.O.C.K, Terminal Choice, Blue Angle, Deform, that's real. Oh, Commie Christ. That's all I can really remember off the top of my head. They also represented, it was actually Icon of Coil at the time because this is pre Commie Christ. So it was Icon of Coil, but now I think Commie Christ is obviously more of a recent thing. So this was around 97 to 99, and I was still a teenager. And during the time, there was an uprise in more synth-based music referred to as synth pop. And there was a lot of debate as to whether or not synth pop actually belonged within the realm of a Gothic subgenre. For example, apart from Gothic, dark wave, cold wave, post-punk, EBM, industrial, and even new wave, these were all genres that were not out of place within a goth club because they were all reasonable subgenres. Synth pop, however, presented a little bit of a gray area for a few reasons. It's not very dark. We were fed a steady diet of The Wake, Switchblade Symphony, Rosetta Stone, Bauhaus, Joy Division, Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry, Skeletal Family, Suicide Commando, Leather Strip, Frontline Assembly, Project Pitchfork. We're listening to all these dark, aggressive, brooding bands, and then you bring in a band such as Iris with their song Annie, Would I Lie to You, which is night and day. It's a continuation of new wave. And new wave we heard a lot of in the clubs. We actually had set lists that had new wave worked into it, but that's really where it ended. Interesting little side note, and this will be a bit of nostalgia for anybody who was ever a regular at the bank in New York City. In the main room, DJ Ian Ford spun, and he would always spin the song by Naked Eyes, There's Always Something There to Remind Me. And whenever he would spin that song, the whole room would scream the word bitch at this precise moment. Bitch! I have no idea how it started. I don't know where it came from, but it was just like a random verbal new wave mosh pit. If you know the origins of this, I would love to hear it. Let me know in the comments. So back to the synth pop. Having friends in Germany and having interacted with a lot of these bands, I've come to find that they are popular amongst an entirely different audience in the States versus back in their native lands, be it Sweden, Norway, Germany, somewhere in Europe. But they are more mainstream and they're catered toward a more mainstream audience. Whereas they come here they are in their pressed slacks, their button-up tops, and they find themselves playing for a crowd of goths dressed in their goth finery, which is a huge change up for them. So a lot of these bands that I'm referring to are Division, Wolfsheim, Be Born Baton, Iris, Key the Vez, Mellotron, and One kind of straddles the line. I will say I do love End One. I've seen them a few times and they never disappoint. They put on a really good show. I'm going to put one of their songs, one of my favorites, one of the songs that they would play a lot in the clubs here. In fact, a lot of the songs and bands that I mentioned, I'm going to make a playlist for. I want to give you sort of the experience of a lot of these synth pop songs that we were hearing around at the time. Now, obviously, these bands are still producing music, but I don't want to show you the music they're producing now. I want to show you exactly the songs that they were playing in the clubs at the time so you could really decide. I'm very interested to know how you feel about synth pop music. Do you feel it has a place? Personally, I do like a lot of synth pop, and I do feel a lot of it does have a place. Some of it can be a little bit too perky for my blood, but it's interesting, it's good, and I'm going to play a lot of it. I'm going to put it on my playlist. I've actually, I think I have about 8 songs on my playlist at the moment. By the time this video gets uploaded, could be more, could be less, who knows. But I really want to give you a feel, and I'm dying to know what you think. So tell me in the comments what you think, the bands that you'd liked, and if you heard any of them before, and if you feel that synth pop does have its rightful place within a gothic subgenre. On to the stories. So my ex's band had played a lot of shows and opened up for a lot of synth pop acts in places all over New York, New Jersey, Boston, Philly. So I got to attend a lot of interesting shows and got to see a lot of different clubs, meet a lot of different people, and also meet a lot of different bands. So this was my second time going to a sort of goth-related function in Philadelphia. The first time I ever went was when I saw Sisters of Mercy, and this time we were going because my ex's band was opening for a band called S.P.O.C.K. S.P.O.C.K was a synth pop sort of electronic band. They were based out of Sweden, and they are obsessed with Star Trek. Every single song that they play is about Star Trek. Their uniforms are Enterprise uniforms, and it's really interesting to see because they put on a really fun live show. They're very charismatic, and every show we get there early. The club's empty. Just basically, crew and anybody that works there is at the gig, and we are in the dressing room with S.P.O.C.K, myself, the band Matrix, John, the singer's girlfriend, and we're all sat with the band S.P.O.C. And I can't remember for the life of me the conversation that we were having, but everybody was hysterical laughing. I wish I could remember what it was, but all I can tell you is that it was really funny. And the one person that wasn't laughing was a guy in the band who they referred to as Elvis. Now, the song that I put on the synth pop track that I have included in the playlist for you, he does backing vocals. You'll see why they call him Elvis. So Elvis is sat there, and as we all are on this sort of bench that's built into the wall, and he's just sort of he's looking thoughtful. He's not really engaged in the conversation at all, and doesn't really have much of an expression. And it was at this moment that I learned about Europeans' modesty versus Americans' modesty. And I'm 19 years old, and suddenly Elvis stands up and depantses. We're still sat down at this point. Elvis has stood up. So at eye level, all I see is his Swedish meatballs cozily nestled in his tidy whities. So John notices this, and I guess to one, engage him as he really wasn't engaged in the conversation, and two, I guess break up the weirdness that is this man in his underwear, he addresses Elvis and says, "So, how are you finding America?" And with a deadpan expression, Elvis turns to John and he says, "I miss my wife and kids." That was it. The laughing immediately ceased, and that was our cue to exit the dressing room. That's the story. Now I'm going to forewarn you, these aren't crazy, exciting encounters. They're just random ones that stuck out in my mind. And another one that I recall is when they opened for a band called Be Born Baton, and this was at a Long Island club called Detour. And here I am, I think I'm 18 years old, and I'm thinking, hey, this is Be Born's first time playing a show in New York. I'm going to make them cupcakes. So I make a few batches of chocolate cupcakes, and we make our way to the club in separate cars. We have John and his girlfriend in one car, and myself and my ex in our car. And we're headed off to Detour. And we're sat in the parking lot directly across the street in our cars waiting for the owner to get there and open the doors and let us in so that they could sound check, they could get ready, they could do their thing. The owner arrives, opens the doors, and Be Born Baton is not far behind us. And we go in, I'm sat down, everybody's doing their thing, they're setting up, they're sound checking, they're talking to one another. And I notice one of the men with Be Born Baton, I think he was either a roadie, he was sound check, I don't quite know who he really was, but he was with the band. And I see that he has a terrible cold. He's coughing, he's congested, he's sneezing, he's incessantly wiping his nose on his sleeve. So I feel bad. I have tissues in my purse. So I bring him some tissues. I walk up, I tap him on the shoulder, and I smile and I hand him some tissues and say, "Here you go." And he looks at me with a very confused expression, but smiles and nods as if to say thank you, puts the tissues in his pocket, and blows his nose on his sleeve. 1999, I was 19 years old, and Covenant came to play New York City, and me and a bunch of my friends, we saw them at the Bank in New York City, and it was a ton of fun. A bunch of us went, and we were right up front. A lot of my friends were total fangirls for S.P.O.C K, and I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit smitten myself because he was a really attractive guy. Tall, thin, very charismatic, had those chiseled features, good looking, and put on a great show. So put all those things together, and obviously you're going to get a little bit swoony, which I did. The band starts playing. Eskil is totally on point. He's going from one side of the stage to the other, and as he comes over to our side of the stage, my friends automatically, the hand goes up, and they're screaming and trying to grab his hand, and he's grabbing all our hands and all that. And you have to remember, the stage at the Bank was not very high, so it's not like we're up against a barrier or anything. The stage was no more than maybe 3 feet off the ground, maybe a little bit less, and we're right up against it. So this is a point that I really should have been paying attention, and I was not. He's on this side of the stage, and I see him making his way over, so naturally the hand goes up. Something catches my attention from over here somewhere, and in that split second, suddenly he stood in front of me, and his testicles are in my hand. I'm cupping this man's nuts. You would think that the natural reaction to getting your testicles groped would be to jump back. That's not what happened here. So I'm stood there, this man's testicles snugly nestled into my hand. I'm basically sexually assaulting him, and he's continuing to sing. And I'm thinking, do I move my hand? Can I move my hand? No, I'm frozen. So he continues to sing, and I'm just shocked at what's going on right now. Finally, he moves to the other side of the stage, and I can put my hand down. So before I can really process exactly what just happened, I quickly realized that I just started a trend. Now everybody in the front row is grabbing this man's nuts. And you would think that he would immediately move further back from the front of the stage to get away from the groping hands. He loved it. In fact, he moved closer than he was before. By the end of that gig, every single person in that room had gotten a fistful of Swedish meatball. I invite your comments below. I'm curious to know what you think of the synth pop genre. Do you like synth pop music? Have you ever heard it? Do you think that it fits within the gothic subgenre? Have a listen to the playlist I created. I'm going to keep adding as I go, and I hope you enjoy it. And I hope you've enjoyed this video, even though it did have a bit of a testicle theme, which I really didn't intend. So I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Bye.